And welcome to another live stream on this, I'm going to call it a sultry evening. I promise not a lot of talk about the weather, but I've just opened all the doors in the house and the windows, so if there's a bit of noise from outside, I'm really sorry. Shouldn't be too bad. But here we are again, and this week we're talking ground and dock. I guess that could sound more exciting. Groundwork is one of those things that every time you do it, you just have to bite the bullet and get through it because it's so important to whatever you're doing. You can't model anything without the ground. It kind of, well, unless you're doing a sky. So this week is vital, but there are some more interesting bits as well, such as I've got a dock front, which I decided to add to the very front of the layout, and we'll look at how I made that. It's all painted, and that's all this week. I also painted the sky and mocked everything out. It's been I did all this. The layout's actually finished, so I did all this a while ago, and it's interesting to go back and just edit quickly the videos ready to put out here and remember what I did. So each of them is more or less in sort of themed order, so it goes right through to the end if that's what happens in the layout, but otherwise it's just going through chronologically. Right, let's see who's in chat. So welcome to everybody. I've seen people from New Zealand, I know there's people from America, people from all over the world, so welcome. I hope that you're all having a really good Sunday. And why is YouTube telling me to insert ads? I've literally just started, and yeah, on your own. They do it every time. But brilliant. Welcome, guys. So I've said hello to a few people. I never managed to keep up, so please take this as your welcome. And also thank you to my moderators, Digger, Timber, and Norm. They do a brilliant job of keeping the Russian chatbots in line. I don't know if they're Russian, but anyway, the overseas chatbots that always want to sell me some kind of dodgy thing. They do a great job with that, and if any of you guys get out of line, watch out for them. So we've got people in New Zealand saying hi. Hello to, I know Scotland's there. Yeah, I don't think Digger's going to make it. He just said he was in the Pennines. He's not going to make it to my house to get through a window, Norm. Not in time. And the side gate's locked. So welcome, everybody. We got somebody in, quite a few people in New Zealand, it seems. I've been sanding earlier today, so I've got a little bit of dust still around. I think I've got it out my hair and out the t-shirt, but hence I was saying earlier I was hugging a Hoover all day because when I sand I often have the Hoover on, and you know how much hot air that jets out. Actually made my lounge my kitchen quite hot for a change. Newfoundland, well, that's very exciting. Definitely. Digger, it's a patio door. I'm sure you'll get through the window. It's full size patio door open right next to my desk, so hopefully that will keep me cool. It's not the time to talk about the weather. It's time to talk modelling though. But modelling has got its challenges in this weather, and one of the reasons I stopped doing my big layout is it's up my loft. It gets up to 40 degrees in there regularly. It's too hot to work in, and this summer especially, it's just been way too hot. It's insulated, but not enough. So I'm hoping with a new workshop, where I'm actually going to be in the loft, I'm looking at all the ways to keep cool up there. But if anyone's thinking of whether to put a layout in a loft, I put 50mm insulation on, and it just wasn't enough. It does get bakingly hot up there, and it's probably the second reason that I've got rid of that layout. Sadly, over this hot weather, I've had to be clearing it out, so I have spent a lot of time at sort of very early in the morning, if I could get there, clearing out the loft, and then by sort of 10 o'clock it's like an oven again. So who else has arrived? Newfoundland, hi Walton Paul, sunny old Norfolk, oh nice. I was visiting my dad last week and he's in Essex. Actually it was this week, just gone. And he's in one of the dry spots in the country, but Norfolk, I used to go on the Norfolk Broads on holiday. It's a great place. Washington State, I don't know what your weather's like at the moment, Scale Model Craft, but I'm hoping, you probably have air conditioning, but I'm hoping it's nice and pleasant. We've got Vanaja. I didn't realise Vanaja, and I don't know if you pronounce it like that, Diesel, was from Finland. Hello. Nice to see you. Timber's saying he went to a model railway exhibition today and at least 2 layouts have problems with locos overheating. I would never run mine when it's this hot. My track would warp, and perfectly great track that I had laid would start to buckle out on the joins that weren't soldered. I'd always soldered my curves, so it would pop out. It was really difficult, and humidity often sets things off anyway, so there's always a worry at a model railway exhibition. And also really hot. There's a few whiffy people there as well, I expect. Model railways can be quite hot and smelly. Let's just go there. We've got South Wales, old South Wales, definitely. And then who else have we got? Right. Paul's in sunny Swanage. Oh, that's lovely. I've got a friend moving to Corfe Castle, so I'm hoping to make it down to that end of the world a little bit more soon. Go visit. Campsite in Cornwall. Now that's dedication. Logging on from a campsite in Cornwall. And then beautifully cool today. 34 here it was. That's obviously Celsius. So nice it was in Washington State. If it's nice and cool. It's supposed to be cool tomorrow with rain, and then even cooler with more rain the day after. So I'm ever hopeful for a bit of rain because my garden is struggling. Stephen came back from holiday in Canada last week. Rocky Mountaineer. Oh, brilliant. I mean, I've been to Vancouver, but I've never been on a train. Well, I went there by train from Portland, Oregon, but I've never been on any of the trains across Canada, and I'd love to do it. The scenery just looks stunning. But I mean, it just rained solidly in Vancouver, so it didn't leave a great impression. It just left a very wet impression. Seemed lovely though. But nice, really nice. So, nearly 10 past, give everyone a little bit of time to get in before I start properly. Patrick says, I'm more for 1/24th dioramas, but most info seems to be either rail or wargaming. That is an issue. I tend to move between all my scales. 1/24th is a nice scale. I like to be able to see what I'm doing to put detail in. I'm doing a 12th scale at the moment, which is just a little bit bigger. And it's amazing how little you can get in. And yeah, it is a bit of a nightmare. Very much a nightmare. I'm trying to force all the perspectives so that it just doesn't look too big, because it's going to get dwarfed by otherwise. And it's you know, it's this big, the diorama. Thankfully I'm not keeping it because I am out of space now. People need to pray for a wet winter this year, else next year is going to be even worse. Big boys fun. Yeah, they say the winters are going to get wetter and the summers are going to get hotter. So we'll see what happens. But I believe it's a great British pastime to talk about the weather. We do it all the time because it changes all the time. So time to talk about modelling. Now, I said this week I was doing ground, and you know, I was looking at it. I did my first Port Dinorwic and I used foam and I covered it with card, and it warped like a banana. So when I turned it upside down and covered the other side with card and weighted it, and it didn't quite warp back. But that's one of the reasons the old layout went in the bin. This time I've got laser cut baseboards. But the trouble with laser cut baseboards, not really a problem for a dock because it is generally flat, but it's Wales. Wales is not flat. So if you look at this area, it's flat at the front, and then almost straight away there is a massive cliff face, and it starts to just rise up to the Welsh mountains. It's just that kind of area. But they have got a nice flat area at the front of the dock, which is where my rails are. And the trains come in on an incline through a tunnel. If you saw my Instagram countdown earlier today, it's probably on Facebook, then you'll have seen the incline as you look down the tunnel as I'm modelled it. But it just, you know, I needed to add some of that groundwork in to get the height into it. But also, all the track's embedded, so I needed to embed the track. Now I could have used something like Daz Clay, which I did use when we look at the actual dock surface in a future video. I could have used sort of Daz Clay for the whole thing, but it's cheaper to try and fill the gap with something cheaper. So I actually used card again and weighed it well, and this time it didn't warp because it was onto plywood, which was a big relief. So we've got Vez has arrived and Boxcar Jerry. 24th is a good compromise. So people debating scale, it really depends what you're modelling as to what scale you want to be. If I'm doing sci-fi, my Machine and Krieger's 20th, and that's great. I really like that scale. It means you have to be good if you're doing anything with figures at figure painting. And actually, if you're doing a really large whatever, then it won't fit. So my spaceship is 28mm. It's about 1/59, and it's this big. It's the one I just did in a video. It's, well, maybe that big. Just look at that. You know, there's no way I'd want to do that in a larger scale. So it's always a balance with the railway, especially 1 to 76th in the UK, 1 to 87th in most of the rest of the world. If you doing HO or 00, you can get a nice balance. I love O scale. For the size of it, you can see it, but I tend to go narrow gauge in O scale so that you can get more track in and get it round the corners without having massive curves, especially on a small layout. And actually, I think S scale is one of the nice scales. It's 1 to 64. It's halfway between HO, 00 and O. So, you know, plenty of scales out there, but if you're doing anything that wants detail, I always try and go bigger. I'd love to do a full 6 scale diorama, but I just don't have room for it. Wow. So Stephen's trip to Canada was a holiday of a lifetime. Sounds very good. Red says you can't get into any models at the moment as it's too hot to sell to anything. I know that feeling, but actually my kitchen where I model is the coolest room in the house. So it's not too bad. I think it's because it's got a stone floor. It's got underfloor heating for the sort of winter, so it's beautiful in there in the winter. It's nice even heat, but in the summer that stone floor makes such a difference. And then Big Boy's Fun says, Engage Boy here. I just love how much I can get onto my 8-foot-by-4-foot board. If you want to do Engage, I mean, you're going to get so much more scenery in. I just find it too small to get the detail I like in, but I can really appreciate why people do it to get the most in. But no matter what scale you're modelling in, some of the basics are the same. You're going to use similar baseboards or bases for all your dioramas. You're going to use something like foam or sculptor mould and carve it. You can use so many of the same products. Static grass, you just choose a longer static grass in the larger scales. So in some ways, it doesn't matter what people are modelling. To me, the difference between model railways and wargaming, which were the two that were mentioned, is wargaming is often a lot coarser because it can be played with. They don't want fine scale detail. But if you look at model railways, people, they've got to move it. So there's some parts that are going to move, but then if they want to do detail in buildings and things, it's quite often fine scale is lauded as better. I mean, frankly, it's whatever you like to do. And at the end of the day, whatever scale you model in, you're still going to paint everything. You're still going to form ground. You're still going to kind of weather it, unless it's a shiny brand new car. So, wow, this is contentious. Timber thinks the best compromise scale for railways is actually TT. Not so fiddly as M, but can get a good layout on a tabletop. It's actually having a resurgence with the big manufacturers. That's true. My favourite is S of the scales. I haven't modelled in it, but I like the look of it. Paul Shrimplin says, some advice when doing your bases work. If you spray it all black, then spray different greens to lighter, your ground will look real with depth and shadow. He called Night Shift on YouTube. Yeah, I'm not a great fan of spraying everything black because then you have to put tons and tons of paint over it to get it back to a light colour. But my groundwork is always tar grout. And if it's painted in earth colour. I generally try not to paint too much of the final finish though, and you'll see that the final finish on this is next time. This is kind of the foundational work, and it's a very miniature based thing to paint everything black. I came out of model railways with my starting modelling, and we never sprayed anything black except maybe rock faces, and even then I would rather put a wash on and stain the black into the crevices than paint everything black and then spend ages trying to dry brush it light. But everyone has a different way and it suits different people. I don't understand why so many people get a diorama they've created with their scenery and then spray it all with a primer and then paint the colours they've literally just covered up. I don't understand that. It's just not the way I think. I try and find a product that matches the colour I want. And I'll often paint it before I put it on if it's like stonework, or I'll paint it and then put other stuff around it. I'll always pick a tar grout or a sand or something that's close, and I might airbrush it differently. Like my static grass will be the white green. I might airbrush it to a different colour. slightly, but it will almost always be ballpark to start with. So just different ways of doing things. So Big Boys Fan says, my eyesight isn't the best anymore. Isn't so Engage hides the mistakes, so I can't see them. That is funny. My eyesight isn't as good as it used to be, and I find I take my glasses off all the time to see stuff. So Don Lawrence has arrived. Hi Don. New subscriber, big N-scale model railroader fan. Love your style, love your technique. Surprised and very pleased to find a woman who's into modelling. Thank you. It is rare, but you know, hopefully it will start picking up at some point because it's such a great hobby. I don't think the men should keep it to themselves. Stephen Cameron, the advantage of spaceships is no one can say it's wrong as they don't exist yet. Well, we do have some spaceships, but yeah, it's really cool. And they always have a MacGuffin for gravity or something, don't they? Patrick says, mine's not rail, not wargaming. It's a type of work done by Joshua Smith. Oh, I love Joshua Smith. Tokyo Bill, Ken Hamilton. I know all those names. Brilliant. I follow them all. Ken actually sent me a calendar one year to thank me for all I did. He's such a nice guy. I saw some Tokyo Build a couple of weeks ago in an exhibition in London. And Joshua Smith, I also follow. Great. They're just great inspirations. So yeah, I can see why you're doing 124th now. It's perfect for that kind of thing. And if you don't look at those people, then go check them out. They tend to do more architectural modelling. But, you know, Ken's always doing caravans with ground around it. They do beautiful work, all three of them. And by the way, my wife's name is Kathy, says Don, celebrating 40 years this month. Congratulations. That's very impressive. Very impressive. Scale Model Craft asks, do I have a preference for modelling figures? Milliput, DAS, Air Dry are what I know. I'd never used Milliput and I'd never used DAS Air Dry. I tend to 3D print my figures, so I don't generally modify them that much now. So yeah, I would just 3D print a figure posed correctly if I needed something different to stock, I'm afraid. Where I've modified them in the past, it probably was just moving arms and things, and I'd cut them and re-glue them and just use whatever I had to hand. I often use Tamiya putty. It's not, it dries a bit thin, but it's okay. Or I might have used Vallejo acrylic putty if I don't want to sand it, because that doesn't sand that well. But yeah, I'd have used one of those, to be honest. So Sean says, I'm doing a probably one-off, given the way my eyesight is going, T-gauge 1 to 450. You can get a lot of landscape in 1 to 450, but I'm surprised you can even see the figures. That is really small. So Polite's a 1 to 87 guy, and that's his world forever. I like changing scales. You get a really different look and view if you change scales. You can, for some things, you just want more detail. But if you're doing railways, I'd be 1 to 76 probably, and do 009 for a bit of a change. And he's got some 1 to 24th and a 1 to 160th police car. So people like to dabble. Patrick said, yeah. Patrick, Ken is definitely great. And Big Boys Fun says he's had 40 years of marriage, but alas, not all with the same woman. I won't ask. So I'm going to put the movie on in the background and carry on talking. So I'm up here today in the top left. It's hard to know where to put myself so I don't block things. But the first thing I'm doing is just trying everything out. And I did the bridge a couple of live streams ago, I think, and I'm just trying to fit it in place at the moment. I change my mind quite a bit when doing modelling. When you actually get there, you quite frequently go, oh, that's not working, or I wish that was different. This was no different to that. So I started to mock everything in, work out where the road was going, because the bridge is there, and the road goes over the bridge. I had all the buildings. Now, I made a mistake when I printed the buildings, and this first building that I put in was sadly not smushed front to back, so it took too much space. It was really dire, and I ended up with not enough space for my road to actually get through. So a lot of this got changed. But my bridge abutment sticks out, and because it's just filament, I just put a little bit of spray putty, that's the beige on there, and just sanded it back. I wanted a really smooth finish. I think it needs a bit of a touch up with black, to be honest. And then I put that on one side and went and sprayed it outside with black paint. I mentioned a minute ago, I've got to raise all of the level of my layout up to track height, or just actually probably about tie height, a little bit above it. And the easiest way to do that is card. I didn't have any quite the right size. I could have done with a bit of a thicker card, but I ended up just cutting it off and putting it in place. It doesn't matter. I'm going to put Daz clay over it next time, and you just fill in the gaps. I'd never used Daz clay before. I didn't want it to be too thick, so I thought it might crack more easily. And it ended up with 2 layers of grey card. This stuff is horrible. It just warps too much. You have to weight it like mad. I glue it with just normal white glue though, so it is quite easy. Let's have a look. So Grandpa Rails has arrived. Hi Grandpa. Yep, it's movie times. And then Don, what do you do with your models after completion? After a while, many models can take a lot of space. They're all on the spare bed. I had friends come and ask to stay, and I had to go, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stay at my mum's around the corner because you can't get into my bed. It's covered in dioramas. I'm going to have a big clear out, but they won't ship, so I don't really know what to do. I don't make things shippable. And quite a lot of them, like my dagger bars over here, you can just see it. I'd be worried that X-Wing would come off its stilts. And it's glued in, not removable, because the weed goes into the water. I don't really know what to do except say collection only, which really cuts it down to just a few people who are willing to come to where I am. And I'm not sure I want really strange people I don't know in my house. So, not entirely sure. I have got too many big dioramas and they just need to go at some point soon. And I need to start doing smaller ones. I'm giving the next one, the one I'm currently doing, away because, yeah, someone else has produced the Scorpion droid and I'm doing the base for it. So he's having that for his 8-year-old son, which would be great. It'll be going to a good home. Stephen, sometimes rather than use figures, you can suggest human activity by having doors ajar, abandoned equipment. It's very true. Parked cars, etc. Yeah. So it's Dwight from Grandpa Rails. Hi. Ooh. Andy T says the tide is out in Weston-super-Mare. That means you can get your mud tan. Weston-super-Mare I went to once and it was just mud rather than beach. And I always used to go to South Wales with my grandparents when I was younger. And it's sand or rock or pebbles there. So the mud at Weston-super-Mare was quite fun. Every bottle I own was on this. I normally put bricks, but there wasn't really enough space to get a brick in. So, and I was trying to keep this flat with the rails still sticking out. So it's literally every single bottle I own. And some of them weren't that heavy, but it all mounted up the more I put on. It wasn't perfect. And I wish I had done the front slightly differently with hindsight, because I would have set the stone down a little bit, but it would have been fine. It was fine. It worked well. So once I got everything done, I was worried about this card ceiling, and it's a well-known YouTube modeler thing to cover your whatever it is you've just done with matte Mod Podge and an acrylic paint. They normally use black. I got raw umber made up, and the matte Mod Podge and the acrylic paint just seal everything. So I did that in a sec. You can just see it going in the far end, just to make sure that when I did the Daz clay, which was going to have water on it, it didn't warp my card. So this is me trying everything out. By this point, I had 3D printed everything. I had designed almost everything, and I had 3D printed it. And this had taken weeks in some ways to design it. Though I did the whole layout in 8 weeks, this was hard work. It was a lot of evenings, a lot of getting the manifold because of the scalloping, slate and the stonework. But we did a whole series on how I did these, a whole live stream, so I won't say much more about them. And we've painted them in a different live stream as well, I think. Losing track. So I was just trying to get them all in, and you can see the problem to the left there with, and that's the more squished one, which allows room for the lorries to actually get through. Big difference. Yeah, that actually is the full size one. I should have put the squished one in. Yeah, I did that one in 2 parts because it's bigger. The squished one was a bit smaller, but it actually had some print errors on it. There's actually a bit of slate roof missing, but nobody ever noticed it. Right. Sean says he's got some 450 horse riders and the horse makes all the difference. Yeah, I imagine their legs are very spindly though. Very, very spindly. Right, foam. Now, I love foam because I have so much of it. This foam particularly is what you get in the UK for insulation. And all of my neighbours, like every single neighbour in existence, has had an extension this year. And over the last couple of years over lockdown. And they're still doing one next door but one, but they haven't got onto I haven't asked about insulation. I don't think they've done the insulation yet. They haven't boarded out. They're still doing the roof. And actually I've got too much now. I've got a whole void loft, third of it that is just full of insulation like this. And it's brilliant because you can cut it with a knife. You can't do it with a hot tool, but I never found the hot tools that great. You can cut it with a knife and you can also sand it. And this one is very soft. Now it's called Celotex. It's always got aluminium on. I tend to leave the aluminium on unless I need to actually carve the front because it just strengthens it a bit. A huge sheet of it may warp over time and I will laminate it if I'm doing it. That's what I've just done on the current one. But realistically, this stuff is fairly rigid. It's very, very good and it's easy to work with. But today I had my hoover going all day when I was slicing bits and modelling some big Tatooine buildings out of it. And I had the hoover going and it was great. I've got the hoover between my legs, sort of holding in the right place when I'm sitting there or standing there. And it's fine. But I used it when I was doing something else and I didn't have the hoover going. And I ended up just coughing and hacking coughing for hours. So I do recommend if you're going to be doing a lot of work with it that you put a mask on if you're going to be doing stuff that involves sanding or you have the hoover going. It's really noxious stuff to sand and it's very soft, so you can't leave it as the final outside coat. Unlike the blue foam or the black foam you sometimes see me use that's it's much denser, this stuff needs to be sealed and needs to have a coat of something on the outside of it because you can dent it just by knocking it really. And so it's not ideal from that point of view, but it's perfect because actually it's really easy to carve because it's so soft. And you can see how easily it just slices through here. Right, so that's foam. And at the moment I'm just insetting the tunnel and this is actually a retaining wall going here. I'm just insetting them in. I wanted the rock face to bleed into the rock a bit, into the wall a bit, and I just did that by slicing not quite to the end of the wall and leaving a bit of rock face there that I carved later. I also, in a future episode, will put on some plaster rocks as well. But that's all in the future, as a lot of this build is. So what have we got whilst this is watching me carve? I need 1 can of bean. I don't really have any food in my house because my kitchen's so manky I wouldn't dare eat here. And Scale Model Craft says I use lead diving belt weights. Ooh, that's interesting. I've never dived. I've got some like car balancing weights I bought to weight my stock, my rolling stock. I guess I could use those. So Vez says I'm a 1/6 girl, so I have to big everything up so I can use the lower static grass and lots of jumbo craft sticks, and also use epoxy sculpt on my models so they get quite heavy. Yeah, I love 1/6. One of my favourite creators or artists, I'd call him, is Dogmill Snow, which if you ever Google 1/6 scale figure, he'll be almost top of the list. I have a couple, I have 3 of his. Actually, I have 5 of his, but 2 of them were like a Kickstarter. And I wish I could afford more, but now I'm a penniless creator. I can't afford them, sadly, because he is absolutely brilliant. And they're just amazing. They are really good. Yeah, and as Norm says, it's a wonderful scale, lots of great figures and heads. I've actually got a lot of 6 scale that I want to do, and I want to do some like a space station with people. Bought them all, and then I found that when I went to YouTube, I stuck mostly to scenery, and that would be very different. So yeah, I haven't really done it. Stephen's still trying to rip out his layout. Haven't had a lot of time of late. Be glad when it's done. To be honest, it's been so hot at my loft ripping mine out, and the builders are coming next month. I got in touch with them because they said end of August, beginning of September, and I said, "Oh, when are you coming?" And they said, "Oh, sorry, it's running late." I was like, "Brilliant! I've got time because I've got to get all the boxes out, and the boxes are out, but they're now in every other room, and I need to go through and sort them because my landing, which they're also using because they're going to put a new staircase up, that's just full of boxes at the moment, and I've nowhere to put it." So I've been doing the temperature in my void on the first floor, and I'm thinking of putting some like kits out there. I'm always worried about storing things, but these will be plastic kits. I've already got the building kits, the HO building kits, so it's plastic, wood, urethane. But it gets up to about 30 degrees. To be honest, the rest of the house is almost at 30. I was surprised it didn't get hotter. I really was surprised, but I think it's shaded partly by the house next door. It's a south-facing slope, that's why I'm surprised. And it doesn't get it as much as perhaps I think, so it doesn't get for a long period. Whereas the main loft has got a south-facing, east-facing and west-facing slopey roofs, and it's just so hot. That south-facing slopey roof is actually going to go straight with a gable end, and I'm hoping that'll help as well, because the brick won't be as bad as the tile. So Norm says 4x8 sheets of insulation, foam sheets, now $65 a sheet in the US. This Celotex is now hundreds of pounds, I think. It's really shot up. $65. I can guarantee, Norm, whatever you pay will be cheaper than what we pay, because Britain has 20% VAT on everything, and we also have more expensive prices to start with. So just imagine that. You know, I hear my American friends moaning about the price of petrol or gas, as you call it, and I saw this worldwide thing, and they were at $4.59 on average, and I was like, oh, that's not what my friends are saying in California, but we were like £8. So there's definitely, or $8 I think it was, there's definitely a big difference on what everybody's paying. But I think America generally is cheaper on almost everything from my experience of being over there. The food seems to have shot up a lot when I went there last, which was before lockdown. Restaurants seem to have got really expensive. 2 inches, 50mm, isn't it? Yeah. Bear in mind, my loft is going to have 150mm insulation. So a lot of my pieces are going to be, all my offcuts, a lot of them are 150mm or 100mm. It's going to be really expensive. And if you have a skip now in this country where you put plasterboard in, it's $450 round us, £450 for a skip. It's $250 if you don't have plasterboard. Amazing how many skips you go through. Anyway, enough moaning about the price of things. Oh, and then Big Boyfriend says he just got a 8x4 sheet here in the UK, and it cost £48. Love to know what thickness that was. Celotex is PIR. The blue or black is extruded polystyrene. Yeah. You can't really get the ones that cut with hots, except for like flooring. Celotex, I think it still burns because like everything burns, but it doesn't melt in the same way. So all of the UK insulation is this white stuff. I do have some really old pink foam that I got, but when I'm using blue, it's really expensive craft foam that I think they get in from Germany or something, still does Styrodur, and it's much denser as well. It's great. I use it for bases where I want a thin amount, but realistically, you just can't get it easily. And because all of my foam mostly has come from building works that neighbours, friends, people at work have brought me sacks of it, I've just got so much of this stuff that I've just learnt to use it, and I do love it. It's really, really easy to carve and sand. Yeah, Stephen said anyone in the building industry is flat out at the moment, labour shortage. I was speaking to the builder next door who's been there 2 years practically. I mean, bless him, he's been like my neighbour. He's been working on the house the whole time. He doesn't own the house, he's just working there. And I'm going to miss him when he goes. He's finishing soon. And, I chat to him every day practically in the week. And he said it's just starting to slow down, new inquiries. But it has been with lockdown. And everybody wanting offices at home and extensions because they're now at home a lot more. It has made a huge difference. Yeah, Tom Thorne, sorry. Is that Tom or Thorne? Oh, let's take my glasses off and have a look. Thorne. Sorry. I wish I could make the size of the text bigger on this so I could read it from this angle back. Yeah, he's saying Americans don't have VAT. You have sales tax, but the whole of Europe has VAT and ours is 20%. So it is a huge impact. It does make a big difference. If I'm getting stuff for the business, I can save 20%. So I try and put as much through the business as I can, but I need it to make a profit, so I can't put everything through. Yeah, Big Boyfriend said thickness is 5 centimetres. Yeah, I think the hundreds I'm talking about are the 150 centimetres ones. And you now have to use insulated plasterboard as well. So I think it's 100 and then a 50 on your insulated plasterboard. It's very, very odd. So Mark Rogerson said, could I just use expanding foam and cut to shape? The only time I ever used expanding foam, it expanded massively. Way too much. I couldn't control it. So you could, but controlling it is hard for me. And then the tube clogged and I only got to use it once. So it actually was a very, very expensive way of doing things. I'd rather use a solid foam, especially as I have probably 12 foot by 6 foot square of foam. I just have so much foam now. It's not an issue. But you can use expanding foam. And if you're doing really big mountains, you may want to. But I probably would face them with something and then just put the expanding foam behind. That's just me. So X-Ray 606 says, I'm in LA and there's a company here that makes giant foam pieces for the film industry to use in prop making. I haven't gone there in a while, so I can imagine how much it is now. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for the foam that they use, because they must either have to build it up in loads and loads of different layers. Oh, and I'm painting sky, by the way. This is just emulsion. It's white emulsion and black emulsion, and it took me about 50 attempts before I was happy with it. It just was too much. I tried to cove the corners and it isn't exactly great. There's not a lot of them showing by the end. So yeah, it was too dark, and then it was too light, and then it was too dark, and it was a bit blotchy. So there's a lot of sky. Right. Jaw21 asked, do I ever use... So I just answered that one. And Big Boy Fan said the price of expanding foam has gone through the roof now. That's interesting. Howdy X-Ray 606, welcome. So Norm says, I'm in California and we are taxed on our taxes. I find it so weird. I go to America and I get out the right change and then they give me a completely different figure because they've added a tax on at the till. I'm like, why can't you just put it in the prices? Why can't you just show it so I know how much it's going to cost me? I have to go round and add it. And if you go to a hotel room, which is what I would most be doing, big cost in America, it's like, oh, I've got a city tax, and then I've got a tourist tax, and there's like 5 or 6 taxes they add on. It's like, wow. Still cheaper than VAT at 20%, but wow. So Patrick says the flooring foam stuff is EVA used quite a bit in the cosplay world. No, I wasn't talking about that. I've got some EVA foam and I do use it occasionally because it's flexible, which is great. No, I was talking sometimes, if you can see an XPS in this country, extruded polystyrene, it's normally a sort of sound acoustic floor slab that it's for, rather than for the walls. The walls are always Celotex. That's the only time I've really seen it in here. And actually most people just use Celotex. But you can still get some of that XPS. If you go on Amazon and type in XPS foam, it does appear. The sponge didn't work, just ignore this. I left it in so you could see. that it didn't work. I don't know, I just was trying different things because I wasn't feeling my sky. Different size sponges, different colours, black and white. Just, yeah, I hate doing skies. Wow, so they're talking about how nice it would be to go to the Beverly Hills. It would be, but so normal asked, is that colour a very pale blue? No, I think it's my white balance. It's actually, it could be that this is Payne's grey. Yeah, this could be Payne's grey that I used, an artist acrylic, and it has a blue tint to it rather than the black. So this was an artist acrylic I used. I don't ever use jet black, so Payne's grey is my normal black, and it does have a bit of a blue tinge. But the white is just white. It's actually slightly pale grey at this point because I've already put in quite a lot of black into it and smushed it around. I think the lights are cool white because I wanted it to feel a bit bleak. It's the end of steam. So it is a cool white, and that I think is why it's looking this colour. There we go. Timbersurf says XPS is not fire retardant, so UK building regulations don't allow it. I'm sure I've seen it for sale on Amazon for flooring and stuff though. So yeah, that's when we don't use it. I'm not sure how fire retardant Celotex is. I've not, but it doesn't melt with hot tools, so that's better. So Patrick says if you want offcuts, you could try and contact Aidan Himes Sculpture Studios, and they use tons of foam for their stuff in the UK based. I have so much foam, I really don't want any more. I really don't want any more. Oh, and look, 69mega.com has been deleted by Digger already. He hardly got it on there before Digger was on the case. Well done, Digger. But yeah, I've got so much foam. I'm about to have my own extension, and my entire loft is full of 50mm foam, and I'm debating whether I keep it or not. I've just got so much, and I don't think they'll reuse it because they said, oh, we like to cut our own tighter, and they don't think it'll be tight enough. Not that they've seen it yet, but they're going around all the rafters, and they'll probably use 100mm rather than 50mm anyway. So I'm not entirely sure I can keep it. I've just got too much already, but I'll definitely keep some of it. So Gunpla Exile, I do know his message also being deleted by Digger. So, sorry Gunpla Exile, whatever you said, Digger decided... yeah, sorry. And I can see David, Celotex is not fire, lol. I don't think Celotex is fire retardant either, but I think it's better than XPS. So that's why they do it. Scale Model Craft. Happy to have some offcuts from some family, but it's crazy to store. That is the trouble. I use quite a lot, but I've actually got too much now, really. And I daren't say no, because you never know. And when you want big bits, it's really hard to have to piece them together. You end up with gaps and stuff. So I've got loads of big bits now. I don't know who I'm kidding. I've just practically got 8x4 sheets of it everywhere. So yeah. I think David's having a real problem. His Celotex is not FI, then it's R, then it's E, and then he says SOTI, which I'm guessing is sorry. So yeah, don't worry, David. So still doing the sky. The moral of this story is most of this isn't actually visible, and no matter what I did, I wasn't very happy. And in the end, I went over all of this with a very, very large fine brush just to smooth it all out. It just wasn't really, I wasn't feeling it. I wanted grey, but grey skies could just be a plain grey because that's that look, but I wanted a little bit more in the sky than just a pale grey. So yeah. So Dave's on another keyboard. Celotex foam is not fire retardant, but the foil on its face is. Okay, that's what makes sense. And that foil is useful, but if you leave it on and you're doing railways, just make sure you don't short something with it because it is also conducting. Good evening, Barnabas Junction. Nice to have you. So Timber says you can get a version of Celotex as fire retardant. Whatever it is, it doesn't cut with PIR foam as it is, doesn't cut with hot tools, and that's the main differentiator. So you'll see me using a lot of knives and bread knives and things like that going forward on all my dioramas because I'm using up this Celotex. Okay, there's loads of debate about, yeah, so David Orff is saying XPS foam is only really used for underfloor heating, and that's where I've seen it, because it often comes as a sort of with the holes for the underfloor heating in it as well, so you can lay it. But anyway, I feel like we've talked enough about foam. It is a riveting subject, but it's not the only subject. Now, you can see, I'm still doing the sky, but I did a layout once in grey. And so I was thinking of that when I was doing this. And what I actually got was, I think it was a matte, but it was wasn't an emulsion, it was for woodwork. And what made it so much better was that takes a lot longer to dry. It may have been acrylic based, because it may not have been. It was a long time ago I did it. It was on my first US layout. And I really like the grey sky, because it's a little bit different. What you get a lot in the UK on layouts and in the US too is blue. So it looks all right. Blue's a hard colour to get, but grey is nice and easy. And because it wasn't an emulsion, it didn't dry that quickly. So you can see like there's a lot of running paint here. And that's because I was trying to keep it wet enough that I could blend. So I was putting quite thick layers of paint on so I could blend it. That looked really good, and all I did was go to B&Q, which is a DIY shop, and buy 3 or 4 greys of different colours in this, and then mix white and grey together. The biggest problem I always have with any sky is trying to blend the colours, whether it's blue down to a paler blue at the bottom for blue, and if you can get a paint that lasts longer before it dries, that is really useful. I've seen people do it with oil paints and they take a really long time. So I did my Dagobah Swamp with it and it just took forever. It took like 4 weeks for it to dry off. But whilst I was doing the sky, you can see what a lovely drippy sky that is. Bear in mind 90% of that's going to be hidden. I also decided to paint my track. It's good to paint track. I think it makes such a difference. And the easiest way is an airbrush. And I painted it the same colour. It's just, it's a lacquer actually, because that's what I spray in my airbrushes. So I've got a massive mask on, which you can't see. It's a lacquer. I sprayed the ties, which you don't really see much by the end, and the track in this same turgid brown. Just happened to be one I had. It's a Mr. Colour lacquer. And I bought quite a few browns and I used that. But I do recommend doing it. You can spend a lot more time, but I'm about to dump loads of different groundwork on it next time, and you'll see that that actually colours it quite a bit as well. So Patrick says he got loads of foam from a local film studio, and the loft is full of foam and he needs to start building something. It's true. And also got foam out in balsa. That's quite good. Balsa's good. Norm, your sky is a nice dreary grey. That's actually a compliment. Hard to believe, but it is. Okay, we're now getting on to really, really complex, foam discussions on it burning. So let's just go with the no foam is good. But on a more positive note, Brickwork. This is Slater's plasticard brick. I ordered some specially and I got the wrong sort. And when I started to put this on, I realised that I wanted it to stand out a little bit from the bit behind. This is me counting bricks. I count so many bricks in life. This is me counting bricks from the photos. It actually didn't end up quite the right size because I misjudged the stone. I had to come back and redo it all. But it's really easy to cut brick. It has ready-made cut lines on it, which are really beautiful. So you can just go down and cut it. I love this stuff. I did almost my first ever diorama using this very same, probably even this same sheets, because I've had them that long. And it's just great stuff. And I wanted, so the concept here is I want the front to have the dock. It should actually be a few feet further out, but I wanted it to have a bit of dock work. I just felt it was going to be better with some kind of interest on the front rather than just black. And I needed to represent the dock. And if I just ended it, it was like, So I put this small amount. These are the holes for the push-pulls for the turnouts. And I basically just wanted it to look like a nice dingy dock. And I've already done a video on YouTube once about painting brick and all this kind of stuff. The bits that I'm playing with that are peach, they are stone, sort of L-shaped pieces, the dock stone. And I did those on a 3D printer. I designed them myself and 3D printed them. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, we've got a lot of talking about Celotex. I'm going to leave that. Timbersurf says, Bosch make a vibrating saw that makes mincemeat of insulation, but it's £1,000 to buy. Pretty sure my builders don't use $1,000 on theirs, but they all use a saw to cut theirs. I can't find my saw. I've put it somewhere safe. So Barnabas Junction says, B&Q Colours Slate Grey is excellent. It's some really great. That's good advice. Trying to find one that's off the shelf is cheaper than mixing your own. Right, just back to the movie for a sec. I 3D printed these extra little pieces just to stick the dock brickwork out a little bit from the black so it would appear to float. I haven't modelled the water, and then this brickwork is now brown. I sprayed it. I didn't use primer, I actually used a lacquer spray graffiti paint because it sticks as well. And what I'm looking to do is prime that shiny plastic. And then all I had to do was drill the holes for the point, turn out little bits, and stick everything on. For this I used super glue. Can't beat super glue for sticking plastic to stuff. And it's very simple. I didn't bother doing much more with this black pieces. They're literally just 3D pieces. Why those? It was just easier to 3D print it than it was to do anything else because I didn't have anything the right thickness. Because I didn't want it too thick. Just to do with the just the concept of after. And 3D printing takes a few minutes to do these pieces. So I super glued it on and zapped it in place. Right. I like the look of your sky with the harsher contrast. I like to think of it as matte painting and just give the suggestion. I'm not a painter, but I try to do mine like the movie matte paints. Yeah, but there's no, the actual sky in the video that I'm copying is quite bland. So I went bland to match that. And that was the trouble. It really is just whited out. So I guess it's an exposure thing. But actually it's just a soft, misty Welsh look to it. The harsher contrast just didn't look right with the feel I was going for Wales. And I spent a lot of time in rain in Wales, and it is a softer colour, I think. Yeah, Norm is right. It was determined by the black and white photos, so it's quite hard. Kenta, happy lazy Sunday afternoon to you. So Stephen says, my next layout will be based on CJ Freeze's town terminus plans. It's a good way of making a small layout seem bigger than it is. CJ Freezer was excellent, wasn't he? Now, I screwed up on this because my stonework was too thick. Because I 3D printed it, I made it probably oversized. And I did all this. And you can see that actually I come back in my pyjamas in a bit, and I got up at 5 a.m. because it was bugging me the next morning after this. I came down in my pyjamas and I ripped everything off and redid it. So this is the first attempt. Yeah, Petrick, I should have used retarded, but I was using emulsion white and I was using so much of it. I just didn't bother. Yeah, I knew that that Celotex was using Grenville. My builder told me, so great. Hi, Iron Horse Root. Nice to see you. Oh. Hi, Brian.
apparently that's your name. It comes further down. Mark says, I used rail match to do my track. I enjoyed it, but I had to be very careful of gaps. Also noticed my railway is round, so I had to check it looking good from multiple angles. Don't begin a mistake. That is the one advantage of this. I did try and spray it back a bit, but unless you're actually putting your iPhone in towards the back of the layout, it's really hard to see. And also, by the time I've added in all the other bits, the tile grout and everything, it wasn't too bad. Excellent. Stephen asked, do I ever use linker castings, Kathy? No, I think they're too large for HO and OO. I just don't. And I guess I could use them for stonework, but I never have. So, no. But people have said to me for ages, they're really old now, aren't they? I don't really see them around much. Norm says he's fine. Okay. Timber says he wishes it was raining in Wales right now. Yeah, we get our water from Wales, so yes, I want it to be raining in Wales. Oh yeah, and Timber's reminded everybody, if you're enjoying it, please hit the like button. Apparently it's really important to make YouTube feel that I'm liked. Important. Now, I was not really feeling this colour. It's an odd, patchy brickwork. There's some engineering bricks, which are blue. I mean, they're all engineering bricks, but there's some blue engineering bricks. And there are some red bricks. And I went over it many, many times. What I find is it's just really hard to get good brick colour when it's so varied. I would use a sponge normally to do it, and in this case I didn't. I went with the brush. It was just, yeah, I was really struggling to nail all the colours because what I had was actually quite a bright sunny day and I wanted to tone everything down. I didn't want it to be too bright. I wanted to feel a little bit dreary, which, you know, is an issue. So we got the grey going on because I knew there'd be some greys. So I haven't gone as dark as the probable actual colours are. And partly the layout lighting is behind this, so it's in shadow. And, you know, engineering bricks, I would say the blue's a bit darker than that. But, you know, it is what it is. So, Brian says, thanks for streaming. Nice to have a modelling stream this time of day. I don't know what time of day it is for you, but I'm going to guess that it's earlier in the day. So enjoy your Sunday. Oh, stating the obvious, liked it. Thank you very much. And Scale Modelcraft liked and added to the calendar. So I do this live stream every second Sunday of the month. I probably am going to be doing Port Dinorwic for the rest of the year because I have quite a bit of it. I didn't want to do it really edited. There will be an edited version out in under 20 minutes for YouTube later on. And just like I did with Dagobah, and that catches up all the people who don't want to sit through a live stream. But live streams aren't just about modelling, they're also about chatting to people. So they do a slightly different thing. Scale Modelcraft, have I ever done anything in black and white? Interestingly, my Next But One project is probably going to be more black and white than colour. But I wanted to do a logging sort of a logging scene in black and white, or more sepia and white actually was the plan, and it's just on the list still. It just never got done. I am doing black and white for part of the next diorama, and it's basically it's for somebody I know who has just got a Kickstarter out, and their free STL is Amaroth, which is a big mammoth earth elemental for wargaming, and they're going to send me the painted one. I'm doing the diorama for it, and the idea is that this elemental comes out when the land has been devastated, and he gets really angry and he stomps around and kills everybody, I think. But anyway, where he walks, he gets nature growing in his footsteps. And I've been thinking about it, and I want to do a black and white diorama with the only colour being the mammoth, which is Amaroth, which is coming to me, couriered, and then the footsteps behind him will have grass or something, or flowers and things growing out of them. That's the kind of idea, and they'll be the only colour. He and they will be the only colour. But I think the rest of it is going to be like a burnt forest. Probably because I just watched last night Those Who Wish Me Dead, which is Angelina Jolie running around in a forest fire. And, you know, I enjoyed it. It's amazing how much people like to moan about on IMDb about films now, and they expect like a miracle from a popcorn action movie, but it is just a popcorn action movie. And there's a scene where they are in the devastation after the fire, and I was thinking about it, and I think that sort of charred remains. So that'll be black and white, but not the whole thing, just for effect. Stephen, just a random question. Does anyone else remember a programme called Spaceships in the Mind? The miniature effects were done by Matt Irvin, who did Doctor Who and Blake 7. I have watched Doctor Who and Blake 7, almost all of them. Well, since I was old enough to watch Doctor Who. I've never heard of Spaceships in the Mind, I'm afraid. Kevicus, hello. It's 4 p.m, train time in the US. Every time is train time, Brian. So Scale Model Craft is saying, I visited East Berlin in the 80s and it was like being in a black and white movie. Yeah, I can imagine. That's kind of, it's a great effect. Oh, and Scale Model Craft says, fantastic idea, looking forward to it. Thank you. I hope you mean the diorama. So then Norm says, the wall with its many colours is looking great, Kathy. Yeah, it's going to get weathered a lot, don't worry. This is only the base coat, and you can see I'm trying to hand paint, but these are so small, the bricks, you don't really want to hand paint that much. And I'm going through adding in more and more colours. It does get a lot less blotchy and a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Cohesive, I think, with time. And I think there's this thing where on YouTube I may only show normally like a couple of minutes at most of painting the brick, because this is part of a much larger project. And it becomes quite hard for people to realise just how many layers I sometimes put on, because I just don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm not quite there. And given that I'm not painting and my hand's wobbling, I guess I'm doing something on the phone there. But, you know, a lot of the time I don't get there straight away. Oh, it takes time to feel the colours. It was still looking too blue, so I had to go over it with a bit more red in a minute. Timber says, if you do enjoy the content, subscribe to be notified of content and consider joining the channel as a member or become a Patreon member. Links below. Woo! Thank you, Timber, for reminding everybody that. So Jaw21, are you or anyone a fan of the Game of Thrones House of Dragon world? I'd love a diorama of Dragonstone or King's Landing. I quit 2.5 seasons in. I got fed up with all the rape and violence. I don't need to see it constantly on my TV screen. I am fed up of everything being so violent now. I just, you know, I wouldn't watch an 18 film. I don't see why I should put up with it for enjoyment. So I don't watch it. I didn't watch it. Sorry. It just gets too much. If you just sit there and watch an unremitting amount of violence, it's not fun. But I did go to a talk by the photographer of Game of Thrones, and there was definitely some challenges in capturing all the great footage. And Digger's been putting up the links for Patreon and channel members. Thank you for that. It's an interesting one. My patrons haven't had a lot in the last couple of weeks because I've been on holiday, and I owe them a video probably. But it's I try and do a video a week for them. It's either an early release. It's the same for the YouTube channel members. It's either an early release of what I'm doing anyway, or it's a special Patreon YouTube channel member only video. Recently, I've been struggling just to get the content out. I've had to do quite a lot of stuff on the house. I've basically had 2 years of not taking any weekends, so I'm really behind on a lot of house jobs. And one of them was clearing out my loft ready for the workshop. So I've had nearly a month and a half off just trying to clear everything out, dropping my sister down to my dad's, doing all sorts of things. It's just been, you know, down again for a funeral. I've just been all over the place without really achieving much. But I did do on my holiday for the first 2 weeks, I did the spaceship, and now I'm doing Tatooine. So I started Tatooine today, just making the buildings and the base. It's good. And then Kevicus took a lot of it out, as a lot of people had the same review. I'm really confused by that. Oh, they took a lot of it out, as a lot of the people had the same review. Yeah, I heard that. Someone said when it was only the women left, there was a lot less rape. Well, I guess so. But hey, by that point they'd lost me. So their loss. And, you know, it did look stunning, but I haven't watched Wheel of Time. I haven't heard great things about that. And jury's out on what I think of the new Lord of the Rings. We'll see what it's like. But I tell you what I have watched recently. Halo. Not Halo, but actually quite good as a sci-fi series. And I really enjoyed the design elements of it. Strange New World, best new Trekking ever. And the Orville, which is probably better than Star Trek actually at being Star Trek. It kind of remembers what the point of Star Trek was. So that's kind of my watching. You see why I do a lot of sci-fi dioramas, because that's what I love watching on TV and movies and things. So that's basically where I am generally. So who else have we got down here? Timbersurf, recent bad news, not about war, financial meltdown. There will not be a fourth Orville season. No! I googled it only the other day and they said it was depending on whether Disney did well on its release. Oh, I loved the Orville. I really did. Oh, they did it so much better than Discovery or any of the others. I mean, Strange New Worlds is good, but I just thought Orville was really good as well. Is the trip to Japan still on, our Stephen? Yeah, it's still on at some point. We need to get funding for for it, basically, and then it will be time for us to have, go over. We've got a major supplier in Japan for the new job I'm hoping to get. And I'll tell you all about that when it's actually funded, because until then, it's just not worth the hassle of telling you all about it and then waiting for funding again. So at the bottom on this, I've put on water, and I've done it with a sort of very dark black and dark green kind of colour, which is, just to represent the water. I haven't actually put any water on. I thought about doing it, but in the end I just painted it with Tamiya Clear Gloss. Tamiya Clear Gloss is my favourite paint that's acrylic for doing glosses, because it's quite thick and it has a really nice shine on it. So you can get a really good gloss type of effect. What I'm actually doing at the moment, though, by the look of it, now I can see it, is streaking. There's an awful lot of black streaks down this dot work, and I'm going through starting that weathering process of, there's the brick colour in, sort of a toned down colour of what was actually there in the photos, and I'm going to go and just put down loads and loads of streaks, and eventually it will have some washes and other things on as well. So Seth wants to concentrate on other projects. Oh, but it was so good. Mark Rogerson says, Kathy, today I saw the movie Nope. That would make a really interesting diorama. The mix of sci-fi and the elements would be awesome. I don't even know what Nope's about. I've seen loads of adverts and trailers, but I'm just back at work now, so I won't be going to the cinema for a while, I guess. Eventually I might watch it on a plane. And it's sci-fi, says Mark. Thank you. Yeah, I saw Cosplay Chris had been to the premiere in Australia, and he was raving about it. Best sci-fi show, the last 3 seasons for All Mankind on Apple TV Plus, is worth the $4.99 a month by itself. I haven't seen it. Is it Apollo based? Sounds like it. And I love sci-fi. I was in the middle of the day after Tomorrow, or whatever it is, rewatching that as a disaster movie, because I felt like watching something cold earlier. Sounds really funny, doesn't it? Oh, I'm hot. Let's put a nice TV movie on. So I'm sorry there's so much of me using the phone. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's probably a game. I've actually quit one of my games so that I could spend more time doing actual work. I didn't play much in the day, but I was finding it just becoming really difficult to fit everything in. You say it's $4.99 a month. I think it might be more than that in the UK. Aliens. I might watch some Aliens, basically. For Nope, I'm guessing. Battlestar Galactica, wow, what a watch. I gave up when they were stuck on the planet. I gave up on a lot, you can tell. They were stuck on that planet and I just got a bit bored of it, so I stopped. But it was very, very good. I mean, I remember watching the original. And Big Boys, I missed the old Babylon 5 series. I watched all of those. And Babylon 5, I had all the TV movies. I had them all on DVD. Absolutely adored Babylon 5. It's probably still one of my favourite sci-fi series ever. Yep, it is just super. I guess to get back to the modelling, which is what this is about, this live stream, there's a lot of time you can see just painting one element. And why spend that much time? I didn't spend this much time painting the buildings almost, or the walls, or any of that. And part of the reason it's taking me so long is I didn't quite get the feel for what I wanted at the beginning. So I did a lot of extra layers of paint. And also, this is the main thing you see. This is really what you see the most because it's right at the front of the layout. It's the first thing you're always going to see. See the green going on now. It's just always got to be good, that first thing, because it sets the tone for the rest of the layout. Right. Foundation on Apple TV based on Asimov's book is amazing. Can't wait for season 2. I heard it was okay. I'm not paying for another streaming service, and I'm sorry, Apple, just, no. Blake 7 was brilliant. Yeah. Avon was just so good. Ravenson Express, I'm still loving The Expanse very much. In my opinion, one of the best sci-fi series in my last time. Yeah, I totally agree. It's such a shame it's finished now. I really did enjoy The Expanse. It had realistic sci-fi, and I would like to do some, concept stuff around realism rather than just MacGuffins. So if you've watched it, they actually have gravity through acceleration or rotation. Whereas almost every other sci-fi show does gravity through a MacGuffin of, we have gravity plates, or we have anti-gravity this. Because nobody wants to show zero gravity because it used to be too expensive. Whereas The Expanse dealt with all that really well. It is very, very political in space. Sean says B5 was a game changer. Oh, it was. I remember watching it at university. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Scale Modelcraft, Firefly. Oh, I'm a leaf on the wind. Really love Firefly. I was gutted that got cancelled. Yes, and Big Boys fan, you seem to keep hijacking. We were on Doctor Who last time, weren't we? Norm says it's an alternative history of the space race with the Russians landing on the moon first. Super interesting. Oh, that'll be interesting. Yeah. I've heard that Bab 5 might be getting a reboot in 2023. Done by Straczynski, because he wanted to make Delenn transgender and a few other things, and he just wasn't allowed to do it because they wouldn't at the time. So it's back to his original vision. And obviously the one changed. Some of it got rewritten when the first actor, Sinclair, I can't think what the actor's name was, left, and you got Sheridan instead with Bruce Boxleitner, who was very, very good, I thought. The best era for 70s kid is the Stargate. Was that 70s? I remember Stargate as a adult. And I was born in the 70s, so okay. Yeah, so for a 70s kid, that makes sense. Stargate is good. I do enjoy it. Right, I'm still painting the brickwork. Wow, this is really exciting, isn't it? Watching me paint still. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about paints. Because this is scenery, I'm not using my good model paints. I use those for figures. I use them for anything that's good. But I'm just using artist acrylic for this. You can get them, they're cheaper. The reason you don't tend to use them on figures is because the pigments within them are supposed to be a larger size. And because of that, you want to use something that's a bit finer so you can do the glazes when you're doing figures and stuff. But for this, they are just normal artist acrylics, but thin so you don't see the brush strokes. Artist acrylics will leave brush strokes straight out the tube. They're very thick, which is great because then they come out the tube without running. You can't drop a bottle them. But is bad because you just can't paint them without thinning. Just make sure you always thin everything. Now that looks like a white brush to me. There's a lot of white streaking, which is lime scale, I think, coming out of the bricks in certain areas. So I've put that on as well. So Kevicus, yep, not for us 70s kids, sorry. Big Boys fans. I have seen some of the pre-story ideas of the new Babylon 5, and to be honest, fans of the original B5 I think will be disappointed. I don't like them remaking stuff all the time. I'd rather they did something that is maybe slightly derivative but at least novel, like Pacific Rim, than they just rebooted stuff all the time. And it's not that I don't watch a lot of the reboots, but Strange New Worlds is very good and it's a prequel. But I struggle with the fact you know what is going to happen to everybody right from the offset. And they've got round it in some way with Pike, because in Discovery he had a vision of what was going to happen in the future. It's very complex. But I do feel, you know, there's a lot of just rehashing old stuff. And I wish they'd just come up with new stuff. It can't be that hard, can it? This is an oil wash. So it's oils in a odorless thinners, and I'm using an oil wash, or is it actually? It might be Winter Streaking Grime by yeah, I think it's Winter Streaking Grime. It's Winter Streaking Grime by AK Interactive, I think it is, and they do it's a great colour. I absolutely adore it, and it's for streaking, and I thinned it with enamel thinners just because it's an enamel wash. It's quite thick, it's meant for streaking, but I love the colour of it, and it just tones everything down beautifully, as you can see. And that's where I really wanted, it's that toned down look. So now I glued on all of this stone. I'd airbrushed this stone that colour, and I didn't really think about it, but it sticks out too much. And when I designed this stone, I put in an element for the brick in the size, but the brick started underneath it. And I glued all this on, put it there, and I was just like, I don't know, it's all right-ish, but then it isn't. And look, I put on these pieces, which are the stone edgings on the bridge abutment. So all of the exterior walls have this. And it was bugging me, but you know how you just carry on doing stuff rather than listening to the nagging voice. So I just carried on doing it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It sticks out too much. It doesn't, it's flush in the real thing. And I couldn't really do much about it at this point, other than maybe sand loads of stuff off the inside. I just glued it on. I really shouldn't have. Timber Surf. Spoiler, the Titanic sinks. I've just ruined that remake. Well, if they've seen the original movie, they might have an idea. Dawn, just a thought, why would Disney Plus be promoting the Orville if it's not being renewed? Because it's just literally streamed. So they're promoting it because they want people to come to their streaming channel over Netflix. And they are growing. So yeah, X-Ray 606. I never really understood the fuss over Titanic, but I'm just not a Leonardo DiCaprio fan, so I always thought that was the point. Clay Man, any advice on a gloss varnish you can put over mirror metal paints? I tested Vallejo gloss varnish and it killed the mirror effect. You'll never varnish over a mirror successfully. I use All-Clad Aqua Gloss. It's an acrylic gloss. It's the best I've found. You can get it on eBay, and there's an All-Clad supplier in the UK. I don't know where you get it in the US. But yeah, All-Clad Aqua Gloss. It's acrylic. It's my favourite to use. I do use other things over. I'm rarely going for a mirror finish. I think it's rare. So I don't mind if they dull a bit. But it is really annoying when you spend ages getting a perfect mirror finish and then you spray a varnish and it's gone. It's just not good. Twisted Rail Hobby says they figure out how to make a 4-hour movie. I am so over long movies. 2 hours is enough, folks. Don't do them any longer. So Sean, one of the best things about B5 was the slow reveals of everything that was going on. A reboot will inevitably be disappointing because it just won't be able to do that for the existing fans. Or they'll just completely change the story, like Halo. Hey, let's not worry about the fact that Master Chief has been out there for 20 years and everybody know what he's like and everybody's played him and everyone's obsessed by the Master Chief. Well, let's just change it totally. Just keep the names. Michael O'Hare, that was it, who played, I thought it was a Michael, but then I was thinking maybe it was a Jeremy. He played Sinclair, suffered with a mental illness that suddenly got a lot worse. Straczynski was willing to shut down filming for months, but if it would help, but he asked just to be let go, I guess. X-Ray says, on its side, it kind of looks like one of those military airplane bunkers. Yeah, it does a bit, doesn't it? And this is the Tamiya clear gloss going on. Now, it's going to dry a lot flatter, so you will see the brickwork eventually. But I just to me, it's got more substance than any acrylic. And to me, they're acrylic lacquers, so they thin with isopropyl alcohol best. But you can clean them up with water. But you are better to thin with something other than anything else. But their black gloss and their black clear are just brilliant for these heavy gloss effects for water. Oh, so we've got rid of some political comments. Yep, that is good. We're not doing... Okay, so we're not doing politics. This is modelling. Okay. David Orff, written out, Straczynski was going to keep the diagnosis secret until he died, but Michael O'Hare said instead to keep it a secret until he died. So that mental illness... I never seem to get the end of some of the stuff that you've got, David. Would get some hopefully good publicity. Yeah, and he did come back a number of times for cameos by the end. Have you seen any of the new Resident Evil? No, it's zombies. I'm getting fed up with zombies. I'm just over zombies. Really over zombies. That's why I want something original. But anyway, at the moment I tend to watch a lot of anime, so I've still got Ultraman and SAC 2049 second seasons to watch, but they'll probably be up soon. Now, despite me doing all of this, I'm still wearing clothes, and now I'm wearing pyjamas. This is 5 a.m. and I am ripping it all apart. You know, super glue is quite brittle, so if you get a nice flat blade, and I've got some tenacious in this resin. You know, resin's quite brittle. This has got about 10-20% tenacious, so it is slightly better than just unbrittle resin, you know, the typical brittle resin you might get. But all I can say is, when it's wrong, you've got a choice. Now, I had a hard deadline for this, for the TV show that I was doing it for, and I had to get it done. And I'm thinking, and the reason I got up at 5 a.m. was I knew if I didn't get it sorted in that morning, I just wasn't going to have time to sort it. And as it was, they were a day late coming for the final filming, and that day made all the difference. I was that up against it. And what I was happy with, it was just sticking out too much. It was awful. So I went through and cut round all of this stonework and just got rid of the excess brick. It's not perfect. The brick should have been out a bit more. I should have done the 3D print plain bases that I did with a butt out for the kind of a cutout for the stonework to sit in or something, because I didn't want to do it any thinner because I was worried it might warp. Or I should have just done the stonework thinner, which is another option. But yeah, you just have to do it sometimes for yourself, even though it's going to slow you down and set you back. So Big Boys Fan says, the trouble with filmmaking is that after 100 years plus, one kind of runs out of ideas for making something new. That's not true, in that a lot of what you're watching now isn't repeating 100 years ago. There's a lot of new stuff coming out, and you always want to catch the zeitgeist of the time. So I do think there's always new things coming out and new ideas. The trouble is people aren't willing to fund new ideas. They'd rather fund a reboot because they know they'll have all the original fans watching it. Oh, I'm often awake at 5 a.m. Digger. Digger said it must have been on your mind to wake you at 5, but I'd actually been moithering all night. Oh, this is my favourite new tool. This is a Despy pen tool. It's basically a mini Dremel, but without the giant big Dremel attached and the sort of little bendy arm thing you use. So it's brilliant. It's really small, and it's just got some kind of like routing bit on it. But one of the things I was trying to do was to take the edge off so my stone would sit back a bit, because I think the stone's just a little rounded on the inside and this is a little sharp. And so by taking the edge off, it would just sit back down a little bit more. But yeah, despite when it's battery operated, it's really lightweight and thin. Absolutely adore it. Got it on AliExpress, but there are people in the UK, oeshop.co.uk. I know they do it, but it's great. And then because I got super glue on the inside, I used it to get rid of my super glue as well, which is really cool. It's just cool. It's a cool tool, and it was about 20 or 30 pounds. It wasn't really expensive, so that's good. Right. Haha. I feel like scratch building to make changes at 5 a.m. Yep, Kevicus, 5 a.m. It wasn't good. Twisted Rail Hobbies, typical modeler, don't like it, rip it apart and start over before dawn. Yeah, well, you're just going to worry about it otherwise, aren't you? Clay Man started to add Tenacious Tooth resin on my advice, and it's so worth the cost. That is good. I mean, the other thing I had to do was drop my cure times in my wash and cure, because I did it. Tenacious is about 20 minutes, and my fast that I was adding it to at the time said 2 minutes, and I ended up dropping it to a 2 because it wasn't enough to make a difference, and it was getting brittle because I'd over cured. But yeah, it does work really well. So Timber Surf, Big Boys fan. Orville was basically a modern version of Star Trek, but stands on its own as a great show, even though it covers similar subjects. He went to the Star Trek producers and said, I'd like to do a Star Trek series, and they went, no. So he created his own. He's a huge Star Trek fan. He has an uncredited appearance, Seth MacFarlane, in Enterprise as a sort of engineering dude. He's a huge fan. So it is literally a spoof of Star Trek at the beginning. And then over time, it became better than Star Trek. You know, Discovery kind of never really found its feet other than to annoy people, it seems. And yet the Orville was managing to get the same messages Discovery was trying to do across, but with a far less hammer at home type of approach. It was really good. It is a nice tool, Norm. Yeah, it's a really good tool. So Big Boys fan says the content is the same, but the idea behind it is always the same. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth. Despite it, some really nice tools. I've got their sort of Gundam tools. They come out of the Gundam world, and that's how I know them, because I was putting some Gundam together. And I've also got a gun primer glass file, which I use when cleaning up nubs off plastic. It does beautiful jobs. I've got 2 different sizes, and they have a balance, which is, I mean, it's all nail file stuff, but it's been rebranded. But the nail files, the glass nail files I got off Amazon, left a line. The edges weren't as neat. This is beautifully done. And you need a toothbrush to clean it out every now and then. But I really, really appreciate using other brands of modelling tools from the ones in your particular part of the hobby. So what you find is model railways do it one way, Gundam do it another way. So Gundam, no 3D printing at all really, because the kits are so good, and they get really excited about doing resin. Me, I'm doing Gundam because it isn't resin, because I don't get excited about having to do loads of work to do a resin kit. I'd rather do a Gundam kit who's just beautiful injection molded plastic. Otherwise I'll 3D print it and do something different. Like all of the Pacific Rim I mentioned a while ago, you can get all of those, and I'd love to do some Pacific Rim dioramas, because always striding through water, which is a great look on a diorama. But yeah, it's definitely a good. It's good to look at other branches of hobbies so you can see. So this still isn't perfect. There's still a bit of an inset around the stone, but I am where I am with it. You can see it there, and it is what it is. It's not changing now. I wasn't going to redo the base and take off all the brick, which I didn't think would come off, and repaint it. I wasn't going there. No. So there we go. One thing I will say is I try and design everything up front, but often it's when you hit it in reality, you realise it's not quite working. So here again, I had to take the top off of these 3D prints, even though I'd 3D printed them and I could have done them without, because I just assumed that the inside of the stonework would be solid and sort of an L shape, and it wasn't. It was more curved, which is probably just the way the slices work and the resin kind of sits. So sometimes, you know, your plans don't really last very long. Have I considered the Micromark Wonder Cutter S ultrasonic knife? Supposedly makes mincemeat of Slater's card. No, for two reasons. One, the shipping on Micromark is so expensive to the UK. I get somebody who always sends me the catalogue and goes, Kathy, does this look good? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not paying that shipping to the UK. It's ridiculous. I think it's £30 minimum. And the item you might be buying is like £6. But that is just £200. I'm not paying £200 for a knife. I'd love it if they sponsored me and they gave it me for free. I know people have been given it and it looks great. And I know Luke Tarrant got it actually, probably from them. But no, I can't bring myself to pay that much for a knife. But it looks great, it really does. So Kevika says he's always wanted to build the space station out of Moonraker. Yes, Mr. Bond. It'd be cool, it would be cool. And there's probably space shuttle kits around, or at least 3D prints that you could have it docking with the Moonraker. Oh, Scale Model Craft, thank you for coming. And see you next time, hopefully. Yeah, Digger, it's a very expensive knife. Yeah, I did buy a Despy knife and I haven't used it yet. And the difference to an X-Acto blade, to me I do this as well, they have a lot more acute cut. So it's not such a long blade. And I fancy trying a different hilt, knife holder, blade holder, because the X-Acto blade undoes itself so much, it really annoys me. But actually I like its length, I often use it to make holes in things. So, yeah. So we're back on to more 3D prints. These are bollards. I've sprayed them the same brown as the Brickwork. I did them at the same time. They're all designed by me and printed by me, and I'm just adding the worn white paint on now. They're not weathered that much. There's the original brown to represent the rust, just a rattle can brown, a worn white paint, and then a little bit of a wash later on. So Big Boys Fan says, never really was a Bond fan as a kid, always more into the Men from U.N.C.L.E. Well, I watched both, but Bond and Men from U.N.C.L.E. are like two different things, because Men from U.N.C.L.E. was TV, but Bond was every bank holiday. Perlite says, this Wonder Cutter can be difficult with polystyrene because it's not cutting, it's more melting the plastic. That's interesting. I thought it was ultrasonic, so it was vibrating really fast, or ultra something. So David Orff says he always used Swan Morton with the number 11 blade for the last almost 40 years. I just never really got into Swan Morton. I have some, but I've just never really got into them. I don't like changing the blades on them that much. I find them a little bit, I've snapped one I think, it put me off. But yeah, they work fine. Ooh, Timber's just about to launch a Stanley knife blade holder that fits in your fingers. I'm not quite sure what that is. I have a metal now box cutter, and it's not Stanley, it's just a box cutter, and I sharpen it, and I use it all the time. And what I like about it is it can go long for when I'm doing foam, so I can use it to create longer bits. But yeah. So Kevik has asked, and this is a really important question, does it not stink the house out doing the 3D printing? Yes and no. So if I come home and go to someone else's house, I don't smell chemicals. If I come home and go to mine after 3 days away, I can smell chemicals, and it's not good for you. I have an extractor fan and a door into my 3D print room, which I now keep shut. When I go into my 3D print room, I wear a mask if I'm printing resin, because I've had headaches for 2 years, and I'd almost got rid of them on holiday. I came back, I did a batch of resin printing and I had a headache again. I just thought it's got to be the 3D printing resin. It's either that or or probably as well, the lacquer paints. And because the room next to the 3D printing room doesn't have an opening window, it's got a window but it doesn't open. I've got an air purifier in there as well, but that's where I wash in that other room. And so there's a lot of smell. So I've started to wear my organic solvents mask while going in there. But I've got 2 doors then between the 3D print. Now if it's the summer and I can open my kitchen, which is the next room's door, it will clear the smell in a couple of minutes. But really, I just put the extractor fans on and keep the doors shut. I'm starting to do that a lot more because the headaches just aren't worth it. 2 years of headaches. That was a neutral wash by Mig, I think. Do like my neutral washes. But yeah, so it is important. You do need to ventilate. Some of the printers, am I at the end? Oh, I'm at the end. That's interesting. Let's go back to me. Some of the printers do come with like filters, and I haven't fitted them on Mars 3 yet from Elegoo, but they do come with printed sort of like these cartridge filters that you can put on so that it filters it. But most of mine don't, and so I just do the room. But realistically, you should not have it in a living space. They are not good for you, and it builds up. So I've got worse over the 2 years, and now it's just there. It's a reaction. So I do recommend that, and I don't think they even stink that much. I really don't mind the smell of it. It's not noxious. It's just there. It's a slight chemical smell, but I'm reacting to it. Even though it's quite slight, it's still there. I don't worry so much about my filament printing, but I still have the extractor fan on and the door shut now. It's just, yeah, it is worrying because it's your health. And I've got a massive, probably about that big, fan down from the loft as part of the ripping everything out there, which I'd used to extract stuff out the loft. And I still haven't I 3D printed a fitting for it, and I need to 3D print another one because it wasn't quite right. It wouldn't quite clear it, and I'm going to put that into the back of my airbrush booth and to the front of it to kind of suck round the front, because I find when you're priming you get a lot of billow back into the room, and again that lacquer smell just doesn't go. So I had a carbon filter, but it wasn't getting rid of the lacquer odours, so now I've got an outside vent, but I don't think the vent on my airbrush booth, I don't think the fan on it is strong enough to really push through that. So anyway, we'll see. But yeah, it is a problem. Okay, so we're back on the Wonder Cutter, and they're saying because of the extreme vibration it causes too much heat in polystyrene. Okay. David, he's been very generous. Yeah, blade changes, he means on his Swan Mortons, can be a pain until you get the hang of it. Big Boys Fun, does anyone remember Sapphire Steel? Yes, but I can't say I watched it a huge amount. Clayman says he prints in the shed. Been great with all this warm weather, can print day and night. I mean, this weather's brilliant. You're supposed to print at 25 degrees and have to put a fan on in the sort of a heating fan in the winter to get it up there. But my room was at 29 degrees the other day inside one of the enclosures. So it's actually getting a bit too hot almost. But 25 to 30 is a good temperature to print at. But yeah. Right. David McCallum and Joanne Lumley, Sapphire and Steel. Everyone's reminiscing again. I didn't watch them in the 70s. I watched them on repeat, by the way. Okay, so people keep saying, why didn't I put a shed in my garden? I like my garden. It's not a big garden. It's designed. It's all done. There's nowhere to put a shed. And sheds need insulating so that I'm either too hot in the summer or too cold in the winter. Mine's in the front of what was my old garage, and I had a kitchen and then a utility conversion for 3/4 of it, and this is the other quarter, and I had it fitted out as a 3D print room. So it's actually a really good room for them. It's cut off, there's no external anything. I've insulated up the door because it was getting a bit cold, so I just have to put the extractor fan on. But yeah, it's a really good place for them. Draw 21, are they my own photography and the pictures behind? No. Well, yeah, hang on, which way? That one's mine. That one's mine. But that's it. I mean, some of them are things like Ansel Adams. Oh, and the lion, that's mine. But it was taken in daylight. I just manipulated it to look black and white at night, because the ones at night were too grainy to use. So, Norma asks, Kathy, how do you keep all your photo frames straight? They're perfectly straight. They are probably not. They're all hung off a picture rail that's out of shot up there, which is just copper tube, because that's what the National Trust use, and I nicked it from them, with fishing line, so it's clear. You can probably, that side, you may be able to just see a little bit of fishing line, but it's almost an invisible way. So I hang all my pictures like that. Every wall that's got pictures on has got picture rails in every room that has them, bar about one. So yeah, they're all hung like that. It's not that hard. And many of them are hung off each other. So there's like a set, then a set, then a set hung on the same fishing line. It's just about getting them knotted correctly to start with. And I used to do them tight with a spacer in between so I could get the space at the same. But yeah. But it is quite thin. So they're all very impressed by that. Thank you, guys. Stephen says, out of our younger club members who use a 3D printer, says cleanliness is crucial to keeping the printer in good condition. Yeah, I mean, I heated my build plate the other day, and when it cooled, the 3D print fell off because obviously it temperature differential, the metal shrank, and it went into my resin and vat and did this everywhere. But yeah, if you get resin under your vat, you're kind of losing expensive parts of the printer. But it's not that bad. You know, you would do that anyway. One of my more recent ones has a vat cleaner, and it's really good. And I was watching the Prusa one, and they actually have a little attachment you can put on your build plate that will pull it up for you. Some really cool ideas coming around now to make it easier and easier for people to get into 3D printing. But yeah, it's like anything. I'm not a particularly tidy person. I'm a piler, not a filer. But there are areas I keep really clean. And my 3D printing, the areas that are cleaned are really clean. The build plates, everything, always really clean. My work area is actually really clean. It's just everything else gets piled a huge amount. So on the final quarter of an hour, and I feel like Port Dinorwic was a bit of a, I did some ground, I did some foam, but that was it. I spent most of the time painting the sky and the dog. And next time, I can't even think what it is. Next time I think it might actually be ground, creating the ground surfaces rather than where I am at the moment. But yeah. So Tom says, if I was born in the 70s, I missed that first one of Star Wars that was so magic compared to anything up till then. I saw it when it came on TV. I wouldn't have gone to the cinema anyway, because I think I was 4 when it came out. But I wouldn't have, I saw it on TV. I made my dad buy a TV to watch it. And we were on a canal boat, because we had one, we owned one, and we had to run the engine halfway through. So I do remember very much it coming on TV and watching it, but I wouldn't have gone to the cinema at that age. And I didn't really go to the cinema as a kid. It was very rare, so I probably wouldn't have seen it at the cinema anyway, even if I had been slightly older. So I saw it as soon as it came out, but I think it was almost like early 80s by the time it came out at the sort of UK TV. But I'm not a Star Wars fan back then. I really didn't really get it. I think I was almost too young for it. It was just Star Wars, whatever. I prefer Blake Seven and Doctor Who, to be honest. I preferred Star Trek. I'm definitely a Trekkie, not a Warsy. What has converted me in recent years to being a Warsy is The Mandalorian and The Clone Wars. The Clone Wars anime, hands down, converted me to Star Wars, and The Mandalorian definitely followed that up. And then Trek was doing Discovery, which was just dire. So Trek lost out, but I prefer a TV series over a film generally. I like the slow burn and getting to know the characters. Sadly, the only character we really still know on Discovery is Michael Burnham, because nobody else really seems to matter, apart from maybe Saru. But he's still been demoted, hasn't he? He used to be a captain. He's still a captain, he's just now a first officer. He's very bizarre anyway, Discovery. And I feel a bit like Star Trek lost its way at that point and Star Wars gained ground. We'll just see how they go over the next few years, because Strange New Worlds was a bit of a change. But yeah, I was, none of the films ever really did it for me as Star Wars. And the prequels are better on a rewatch, but they weren't great. And the final three are pretty dire. So actually, until the TV series, and I watched Clone Wars and Rebels over lockdown, until then, I wasn't a Warsy. Not at all. So Big Boy says, I'm waiting for my new scalp for 9 cutter engraver to arrive. It brings a new level to scratch building. Yeah, sounds fun. Does sound fun. Kevika says, you're hoarding like all modelers. I've seen your video sorting your loft out. Yeah, it's still being sorted, the loft. It's nearly there. I just need to get a few final bits of track off. And I've got about 30 tortoise motors off it now. Stephen Cameron, I'm the entirest model I know. I think we can all give each other a run for the money generally. I've got friends that are immaculate and they tidy up at the end of every single thing they do, and I'm just not in that brand. So Tim Williams has arrived from his little jaunt on a railway. Scooting in very late, was travelling. B7 is a favourite of mine. My mother took me to the conventions back in the Blake 7. So we were talking about Bab 5 earlier, so I was just thinking, isn't it a 5? Back in the 80s. I loved Blake 7. I really did. I was gutted when the Liberator went. Absolutely gutted. And Avon was always my favourite. I didn't watch the first series, so I never even knew who Blake was, because I watched it live, I suspect, and I loved it. But Blake just never really got it. Clayman, I know it all. The more sci-fi, the better. Trashy, high budget, I'm not fussy. Yep. So Meccano Signings asks, how do you spell the name of that mini grinder? So it's Despie. D-S-P-I-A-E. It's from the Far East somewhere. I can't think if it's... I'm not sure it's China. It may be Taiwan or somewhere. Or Korean. But anyway, it's over that way it comes from. D-S-P-I-A-E. Really, really good. In fact, I'll just... just buy. There we go. Who can I hide him? Norm, Kathy, am I doing a video on the robot build? Do you mean the Gundam that I just built and put on Instagram and Facebook? No, that was just a bit of fun. I recorded the first RG that I built and showed me clipping and doing it. And I feel like there's thousands of how to do Gundam out there. So what I'll do is probably more the diorama around it and just say, this is one that's on my shelf. I'm going to paint it up because it's not painted. So you'll probably get it. But, you know, snipping them and doing them. I don't know when I'm going to build it. And I've got too much footage at the moment. And I just didn't really want it sat on a hard drive. I've got the RG, which is the small Zagok, sat there as a set of footage. And I feel that, you know, I'll probably just say, look, if you want to know how to do it, I did it on that last diorama. But I don't know what, I just built it for fun. It's like Star Wars Legion. I actually forgot to video the droidy cars when I was doing them. But I did that. And there's a limit to how much excitement you can get from watching a plastic kit be snipped and put together when it's just all push fit. So not yet. I love the Zagok. I have an idea of what the RG is going to happen, but I'm not sure what's going to happen with the MG. I've just got a lot of Gundam and their big boxes, so I'm going to clip a few over the goodness knows when, but I'm going to clip a few and just get rid of some of the boxes, I think, over time, because I'm out of space. I remember Star Cop, Stephen. Yep. Tim Williams, I saw them in the wrong order too. Series 4 first. They worked backwards via bootleg video. Okay. So that presumably is back to Blake 7. So we're getting near the end. Has anyone got any other questions? I know this week has been a lot of talk about foam. And so I'm just going to finish talking about foam. And no matter what else I do, practically every single diorama I do has foam in it somewhere. It's just such a versatile base. You can carve it, it will build up. And I'm not a fan of flat dioramas because I feel flat dioramas are flat. They don't have as much effect. And if I want to carve into the base, I can do that with foam. If I want to build up, I can add more foam. I just really appreciate using foam a lot. It can get expensive, so if you do know anybody doing an extension, just go and get what they're doing, because you can use either type, either the Celotex that I've been using or the XPS, which is you seem to get in a lot of the rest of the world. Whatever it is you choose to do, it's a great versatile product. Kevika says, Sci-Fi Red Dwarf, best stuff I ever read something years ago. Sci-Fi is soft disclosure. You mean it could be true? I always think the best sci-fi is one that sort of takes a problem from today and puts it in a different setting so you can explore it without the politics and emotion of that today. So for an example, if you want to look at climate change, but you don't agree that humans are causing climate change for some reason, then you can put it into sci-fi and explore what happens without the heated politics. You want to look at a pandemic, you can put it into sci-fi. You want to look what happens if people are racist or bigoted, you can put it into sci-fi and you can explore those themes. And that's what Star Trek did. It's just how you can get around depoliticizing some of these areas and just making them accessible. And yeah, but if you take it too far, every good story someone has to understand. They have to be able to picture themselves in it and understand it. And sci-fi at its best should not be arty-farty, highfalutin. It should be something people can identify with. It's my view anyway. So, right, last few questions. Was wondering if we're ever going to get any more TV with a model where we build compo, says Big Boys fan. No, I really don't think so. I don't think the production company are all the same people are there now following lockdown. And no, I've not heard anything in a couple of years, so definitely not would be my view. Rowie187 says, I used to use layers of free cardboard instead of foam, but I use them both. Whatever's free is always the best thing. Mark Rogerson, here's a QI. I'm making spoke train wheels for place settings for birthday, 10 centimetres diameter. What would be the best way to paint them? Hang them? I'm not even sure. I'd like to coat them evenly. I'd secure them from the back on the hub somehow with a clip probably, and then paint them. If you haven't got a hub sticking out the back because it's for a place setting, I would super glue on something on the back and then attach onto that. Otherwise you've got to paint in two halves and your colour won't match if you're going to paint them a sort of metallic colour. Did you ever get around to the full-size battle droid? Roger. No, it's on the list. I've got the file. I have too much on my list. I have still got to do my OMC Griffin, which is original mecha contest, this thing actually. So I've got to do that, and it keeps getting bumped back by other people's videos. So I've got the Tatooine collaboration, then I've got the Amaroth, and then it's got to come out. It's got an October end date, so it's been going since February, and I started it in March, and I can't get to it because I keep doing other things. And then the big problem is it's got an end date, but I'm going to be starting a new job, and whether I'll have time to finish it, and I'm gutted if I don't finish it because it's a Griffin. It looks really exciting. So yeah, I'm going to have to get that done next. So I'm trying to get the Tatooine one done quite quickly and then the Amaroth one done quite quickly, but it's still really good modelling. And then I can edit the videos up, but I need to get the OMC Griffin done. I've kind of got the base body, haven't done the head, haven't done the wings, haven't done the feathers. Yeah, a lot to do still. And then I've got to paint it. I know exactly how I'm going to paint it. I know everything. Just need to get down and get probably 2 weeks work on it. And I don't have 2 weeks left because it's mid-August now. So yeah, really bummed it keeps getting pushed back. And people keep asking me for collaborations and I should say no, but I know them and they're really good and I want to work with them, so it's not good. Public figures, what washes would I say are the best? Whatever you have. I like oil washes or enamel washes because they spread better than acrylic. I did a whole video on it though, so check out the video. I think it's called something like Washes Magic in a Bottle, ? It's only 5 minutes long, it's not long. And Macari Siding says, thanks, just bought one from AliExpress. Stephen Cameron, so many ideas, so little time. I do this full time and I still don't have enough time. It's ridiculous. I need some legs for my Legacy Falcon. Where can I get the printed? Kevicus, I don't know. There are print services out there. Someone will probably already have designed one. But, you know, I've got 5 3D printers, so I never need to access them. I used to get a lot on Shapeways, and you can get stuff printed at Shapeways if you have the design, as long as it's your design, I think. So Big Boys fan said it's getting late here and have to walk the dog before bed. I actually need to go make my bed, so yes, nearly time to go. Great chat, Kathy, thank you so much. Well, thank you for coming. Railway 187, recognise it would make a few years to realise all my ideas on my wrong railway. Yeah, it does take a time to do model railways. I did mine in 8 weeks, but you know, only because I had to. And then Republic Figures UK, maybe Shapeways, that's what I thought. And then Norm, thanks for the stream, Kathy. Take care. See you next month. Bye, everybody. So, have a great time, everybody. Get some modelling done over the next few weeks. I hope it cools down enough for everybody who's too hot and warms up for all those people who are too cold and is just perfect. I hope you get plenty of modelling done. Thank you for coming. I really do appreciate it. And next time, it'll be another exciting instalment as I make a model railway in 8 weeks and then show you how I did it. So thank you again, and thank you to my moderators. Take care. I've still got 2 minutes left, but anyway, I will see you guys next time. And I need to end stream.